All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking one of the most incredible conflicts in early medieval India. We're talking about a war that lasted for 200 years, and it wasn't fought over some massive empire, but for a single city. So let's dig in.
So that's really the heart of the matter, isn't it? I mean, how could one city possibly be so important that three of the subcontinent's most powerful empires would basically bleed themselves dry fighting for it? To get that, you really have to understand the world they were living in at the time. Okay, so for a very long time, this one king, Harshavardhana, was the guy in North India. He held it all together. But when he died, that unity just shattered. Suddenly, there was no central power, which created this enormous power vacuum. It was a moment of huge opportunity, and every ambitious ruler knew that whoever could fill that space would control the entire heartland. And the symbol of that power, the one thing everyone was after, was the city of Kannauj. Look, this wasn't just any old city. In the minds of people back then, it was the imperial city. If you held Kannauj, it meant you were the true successor to Harsha. It meant you were the undisputed ruler of North India. Simple as that. So why all the fuss? Well, it really boiled down to two key things. First, strategy. Kannauj's location was perfect. It sat right on the Ganges, which meant it controlled the incredibly rich Gangetic Valley. If you had Kannauj, you had the money from farming and the money from trade. But even more important than that was the prestige. It was like wearing the crown. Taking Kannauj was a public declaration that you were the Chakravartin, the emperor of emperors. So who were the main players in this game? Well, first up, coming from the west, you had the Pratiharas. They were based in what's now Rajasthan and Gujarat, and they were a serious military force. In fact, they were so tough, they basically acted as this giant wall, holding back the early Arab invasions and protecting the rest of India. Then, over in the east, you've got the Pallas of Bengal and Bihar. These guys were an absolute powerhouse. They had a ton of money from trade routes and were famous for their massive elephant cavalry. They were also huge patrons of Buddhism, and you guessed it, their ambition to expand westward put them on a direct path to Kannauj. And this is where things get really interesting. The third player in this game wasn't even from the north. The Rashtrakutas were this mighty empire from the Deccan Plateau down in the south. They were so powerful that they could march all the way north, smash both the Pratiharas and the Pallas, but their home base was just too far away to hold on to Kannauj for long. So they'd come in, raid, cause chaos, and then retreat, acting as this huge, unpredictable wild card in the whole conflict. So let's just quickly recap our contenders. You've got the Pratiharas, the toughest nails defenders in the west. You've got the Pallas in the east, the rich, scholarly empire that founded the great Vikramashila University. And then you have the Rashtrakutas from the south, the Deccan Titans known for their military power and stunning architecture, like the Kailasanatha Temple. Three very different powers, all laser-focused on the exact same prize. Right, that's the big question, isn't it? When you have three powerful, evenly matched empires going at it for 200 years, what does that even look like? Did anybody actually come out on top? Well, the reality was, it was less of a clear victory and more of a brutal, never-ending tug-of-war. Here's how it would go. The Pratiharas would manage to capture Kannauj, but just as they're getting comfortable, a Rashtrakuta army storms up from the south, defeats them, and then just leaves. In the chaos that follows, the Pallas swoop in from the east and grab the city for themselves. This cycle, this bloody seesaw, just kept repeating over and over and over again for nearly 2 centuries. And that brings us to what really happened in the Tripartite Struggle. Because while technically the Pratiharas held Kannauj for the longest periods, there was no real winner here. The only true victor was exhaustion. 2 centuries of nonstop war had an absolutely devastating impact on all three empires. Now, mutual exhaustion isn't just about being tired. We're talking about a complete hollowing out. It meant their treasuries were bone dry, their best soldiers and generals were gone, and the king's actual power over their own lands had crumbled. They had literally bled each other white, weakening themselves to the point where they were about to collapse. So what was the result? The entire political map of India was redrawn. Before this whole thing started, you had 3 huge, relatively stable empires. 200 years later, those empires were gone. They had shattered into countless small, bickering kingdoms. And rising from the ashes of these fallen giants was a whole new political order, one that was dominated by a warrior class that would define North India for centuries to come, the Rajputs. The entire landscape was now just a patchwork of their fiercely independent kingdoms. But this new setup had a fatal flaw. The Rajputs were amazing fighters, absolutely brilliant warriors individually, but they were also bound by these really strict codes of clan loyalty, which led to constant infighting. They were always fighting each other over land or honor or some old grudge, and this rivalry made it pretty much impossible for them to form any kind of united front.
So the ultimate legacy of this 200-year war for one city was fragmentation. The great empires that could have defended the subcontinent were gone. In their place was this mosaic of smaller states that either couldn't or, more likely, wouldn't unite. And this left North India politically shattered and dangerously vulnerable.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. By fighting for 2 centuries over the ultimate symbol of Indian power, did these 3 great empires accidentally pave the way for its loss? It's an incredible reminder of how fighting amongst ourselves can completely change the course of history forever.